like that. And then Nick Wilson. So Nick was development supervisor 1991, again right back at the beginning, through to 2020. And I used to bring ginger biscuits to Nick to get him to do things at short notice for us. So I'm going to hand you over to these guys. We haven't got slides as such as this. It's going to be a bit of a chat between them, a bit of some insight. So we'll just pick their brains back over the last 35 years.
Nick, tell us about what it was like in the early days with the first Triumphs, and when did they first go into the market?
It slightly starts a bit before then. John Bloor bought a piece of land down in Meriden, where the site of the old factory, and at the same auction, he actually managed to buy the rights to the Triumph name. And he hung on to those for a few years, and then round about 1985, he put a small team together to investigate the possibility of building bikes in the UK again. The motorcycle industry at that time was really in the doldrums, so it was a very brave thing to do. You know, Triumph had gone to the wall, Norton Village Triumph had gone to the wall, Royal Enfield was no more, BSA was no more, so it was quite a big toe in the water to envisage building a British bike again. So that team evolved into a slightly bigger team. We solely employed a team of designers and production engineers who came in and started to design and eventually to develop the range that started with today. And that range is really what you see in a lot of the bikes around outside. A very modular design, so you could build a 1200, a 900, so it's a 4-cylinder and a 3-cylinder, and a 1000 and a 750 by changing the stroke. And that really was the start of the range. And that range evolved from 1991 over a few years, and they got better. They were still very big, very heavy, very durable. One of John's absolutely fundamental principles was we had to make a reliable bike. Had to be oil tight. And fair play, they were, luckily. We had very few problems with those early bikes. We sold quite a lot. Started to get the name back in the world. And then John started to develop into what we're going to do next. So it was very clearly, those bikes turned into Tridents, Sprints, Tigers, particularly Tiger was a really good bike, good seller. And the whole range then was all based on that modular design, but clearly we couldn't stick to that. So we set up teams that would gradually improve those bikes, and in parallel, we were developing new bikes. So in 1995, 96, the 595 came out, which was a game changer. Fuel injected, aluminium frame, single-sided swinging arm, very much a bike. In John's eyes, he wanted to try and get somewhere closer to meeting the Japanese market head-on, which was always the plan. We had to get that sort of quality, that sort of finish, and that sort of detail, which basically brings us up to where we are now. And that evolved into future models, which are 675s, or the Bonneville family. And it's the same sort of trend you can see through from 1991. So it's worked really, really well.
It has worked very well, and my involvement into the modern Triumphs was convincing John that he'd got all this history. John, you should be using it, it will sell bikes. And it took a long while. It took us till 2012, when John built 1,100 replica Great Escape bikes using the Bonneville chassis, and he sold them all in 3 days, literally 1,100 bikes, and could have sold another 1,100. And I went in his office, just put my arms down my side, said, "John," he said, "Dick, I made one mistake." I said, "Go on, John, what was that?" He said, "I sold them too cheap." So that will give you some idea. And from that day onwards, all the bikes now have got some of the DNA in them. The new Thruxton 1200R, I worked with John 3 years on that project, and that was virtually the DNA from John Hartle's TT winning bike, which you'll get a chance to see next year. It's the 60th anniversary of John Hartle winning the TT. It's the most famous Bonneville in the world. It won more races than any other Bonneville. MAC 233E. and when the bike was released, you couldn't get one. They just sold out straight away. A brave move to take some guy like myself's views on what they should look like and everything. If you look at the carburettors on them, originally the carburettor was designed with a concentric bowl on the bottom, which the John Hartle bike has on at the moment, but the monoblock carb with the side plate is a better looking carb. So what we've done, we incorporated them both. If you look at a thruster now, you'll see the bowl on the bottom on a monoblock carb. So yeah, there was a lot went into the bikes, and the other thing was trying to get the radiator small enough so it didn't upset the front design of the bike, so it didn't look as if it had got a radiator, which Triumphs and the design team were so good at. And Nick will tell you, we're working all the time with Triumphs, trying to bring something different to the market. In 2014, I did a prototype ISDT bike, which you'll see as you walk in, and I brought it up and showed it to John. I said, John, what's the chances of doing 50 of these to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the ISDT that Steve McQueen rode in? And he said, Dick, we can't alter anything because we're 2 years ahead on production, so we'll have to do some subtle changes. So anyway, we'd already done that. We couldn't weld a bar in the handlebars, like the cross brace on the handlebars used to be welded in because they have to be homogated. That takes time, so we just made some little clips up and altered the handlebars. We made a little tool bag for the back, and we had all the riders' names with the medals they won on the side panel, and we sold 50 of those. I had to get special permission off of John to use the old Triumph logo, and that was the first time the old Triumph logo had ever been used on a modern bike, 2014. You'll see it on the tank still. And John said to me, he said, Dick, I'll give you permission to use the logo, but you've got to use our outside paint company, which was 8 Ball, rather than your paint company, because they're not homologated with the factory. But if you do look at what my paint has done compared to what they've done, it's far better. But anyway, that's up to you too. But yeah, so it's taken a while. We worked very closely with Triumph. I fought the council for 8 years to try and get permission for a motorcycle museum where I live. Anyway, we beat the council in the end, but they put 28 restrictions on us. And then we've done a big event at Mallory Park for Triumph's 110 year anniversary. And they said, Dick, why don't you do something with us? And listen, it's where it's meant to be. This is a great venue, it works for both of us, and yeah, we're very pleased to have the bikes here. So, but if you've got any questions later on, please ask us, that's what we're here for. I'll put you back to Nick and he'll tell you a bit more about some of the more modern bikes.
Well, one of the questions I've been asked today about 5 or 6 times is what benefit does try and get out of racing? Well, it's really quite a simple answer. The benefits are massive. You get reliability, durability, performance. You only have to look at the Moto 2, for example. Moto 2 has now been running 6 years. I think we've had 1 engine failure in that 6 years. It speaks for itself. It's actually one, you know, it breaks that records everywhere it goes. Been really, really successful. The same with the off-road bikes now, the scramblers. The Moto stuff is really, really proving itself. It's durable. It's leading the World Championship by quite a way at the moment. Has every chance of winning that World Championship in only its 2nd year. So racing gives you durability, it gives you performance. And next year, I'm sure some of you know, the Moto 2 will be updated with obviously with a road bike to go with it. And that new Moto 2 engine has been extensively tested now. So it's a massive, massive ongoing rolling testing program that puts everything back into production bikes. Really important.
Just to let you know as well, I've just managed to, earlier on, get my name on the new prototype Moto 2 bike, so we'll have that at Mallee Mile in the sprint next year. So if you want to see one go down the sprint, be at the Mallee Mile next year. So.
Any questions?
Come on, get your money's worth. Anyone got a question?
Clearly the success of Triumph with diversification I've just explained. I was just thinking that the Formula 1 now electric's got into 50% of their engines, and
yeah.
I think the drivers' races are, you know, they don't really like it. Is there inevitability, or is an excitement or a reluctance to introduce that?
I think there is, it's always in people's minds as a possibility. The reluctance will be in battery development. And the scale of all electric bikes at the moment is big, heavy, with very short ranges, purely because the batteries aren't developed enough yet. It'll probably come in the future, but it's not there yet. So we're not aren't actively investigating electric bikes.
But they have developed something else that will fit in its place, but obviously we can't tell you what it is at the moment, but there is something else in place that's far better than electric.
Nuclear.
I can't say. I can't say so.
I've got a question.
Yeah, go on.
So given that Ducati, you guys sell more bikes than Ducati, and Ducati have done very well in MotoGP, when, not if, is Triumph going to enter MotoGP?
Well, they're already in MotoGP. They've run their engines in Moto2. So,
Yeah,
what's the point of spending even more money when you don't have to? You can see the reliability of Moto2. So, you know, let everybody else run the bikes. Ducati, that costs them millions to run that team. Triumphs can use that money elsewhere. So.
And also, on that subject, Ducati have got the backing of the Audi group behind them. And without that, there was no way that they could do as much in MotoGP as they've done recently. Absolutely no way. It's cost them billions.
Billions.
Yeah, absolute billions. And Triumph is always quite cautious about getting into a market where there is no really perceived benefit. Moto2 is good because it backs up all the 765s that are running around. But MotoGP, there is, you know, without buying something that's £100,000 as a special, there isn't a bike you can buy. You know, you couldn't buy a Yamaha that's the same spec, you couldn't buy a Honda that's the same spec, and you certainly couldn't, well, you can afford a Ducati if you've got the money, but there's very few and far sold.
So then is the days of Triumph entering a large CC, large capacity market for racing, for instance, like a 1200 around the TT?
If there was a market for a big high performance sports bike, Triumph would be in it. But the high performance sports bike market has declined rapidly over the last 4 years. It is almost on the floor. Yeah, it's a lovely idea. You know, I'll give you an example. We did look years ago at building a hyperbike, so a 1300, just like the Honda Blackbirds or the Hayabusas were around that time. We built a prototype, we tested a prototype, and then the Germans came along and said, "Oh, we don't like these over 180 mile an hour bikes, we're going to limit it to 180 mile an hour." Well, there wasn't a lot of point in building a hyperbike, because our 595 wasn't far behind that, 160-ish. So was there any point? And in the end, Honda Blackbirds and Hayabusas sold in very small numbers with a massive cost to develop for very little benefit for the companies. So we pulled out of the hyperbike market, even though it was a phenomenal thing. I only rode it once, but it was just ridiculous. You know, it was basically a 595 with an extra cylinder.
Right.
But we ended up scrapping everything. There's not even an engine left to show you. But that's, you know, you have to follow the trends in the market. And you know, at the moment, the Bonneville family sell really, really well. All the sports tourers have disappeared and been replaced by all the Tiger derivatives. And they sell really, really well. So you've got to keep an eye on the market and try and keep that little bit ahead, if it's possible.
But like Nick said, that bike was scrapped. And you won't be able to ever see that. So what I do now, I walk around all the bins and we pull out all the prototype stuff. And I say the Triumphs, we're not scrapping that, we're keeping it. So we do try and keep stuff, you know. It's like Hitman's Bodyguard down there, the bike down there, that was laying on a pallet around the back of the factory. I said to Triumphs, what are you doing with that? They said, oh, it's going in the bin. I went, no, it's not, I'm having that. So anyway, we rebuilt it, and now you've got the chance to see the bike that was actually in the film that done all the stunts. So trust me, I'm on the ball. There'll be nothing else scrapped here.
Recycle.
Yeah. He does try really hard, yeah.
Trust me, I try very hard. Go on, any more questions? Ask us some questions. Yes?